Your Wrangler is tougher than most SUVs on the road, but some of the habits owners swear are harmless are quietly destroying them. Bigger tires, simple maintenance shortcuts, even one mistake with four-wheel drive can lead to repair bills worth thousands. Here are 12 Wrangler owner habits that slowly turn a reliable Jeep into a money pit. Number 12 is running oversized tires on stock gears. This one seems like a pure win. You bolt on a set of 35s, the Jeep stands taller and turns heads, and you drive off thinking you upgraded everything. But you just made your whole drivetrain weaker. The factory picked your gears to match the smaller tires it came with, and a bigger, heavier tire throws that math way off. Think of it like pedaling a bike that's stuck in the hardest gear. The engine has to fight to turn every wheel, so your automatic transmission starts hunting, holding lower gears, and building heat it was never built to make. That heat slowly cooks your transmission and your transfer case from the inside. Month after month, you're piling wear onto your axle shafts, your gears, your ball joints, and your wheel bearings, all at the same time. And the cruel part is your gas mileage drops while this happens, so you're paying more at the pump just to wreck your own Jeep. The fix is simple. You just need the right gears. Re-gearing both axles to match your tires usually costs around $1,500 to $2,500 installed, which sounds rough until you price a rebuilt transmission. On the 3.6 V6, most people move to 4.56 gears for 35s or 4.88 for 37s. Do that, and the Jeep drives like the factory meant it to, just bigger. Skip it, and you're on a slow timer to a failure you started on day one. But tires cause a second hidden problem, and almost nobody fixes it. Number 11 is changing your tire size and never resetting the computer. So the bigger tires are on. The trouble is your Jeep's brain has no idea. The computer, your PCM, counts distance based on the stock tire size, and a taller tire rolls farther with every single turn. So your speedometer now reads slower than you're really going. You think you're doing 60 when you're actually pushing 70, and that's tickets you didn't expect, plus a stopping distance shorter than your eyes believe. The quieter damage is to your odometer. It's now counting fewer miles than you really drive, which means you blow right past your oil changes, and your resale value takes a hit when a buyer does the math. People love to say bigger tires alone wreck how your Jeep shifts. That part isn't really true. The shifting gets ugly because of the extra weight and load, which is the gear problem from a second ago. What the reset actually fixes is your speed, your distance, and the wheel speed numbers feeding your ABS and traction control. Feed those systems wrong numbers, and your safety features start making decisions off bad math. The fix barely costs anything in parts. A little handheld tool like an AEV Pro Cowl or a taser lets you type in your real tire size in a few minutes in your driveway. Match it to a GPS speed app, and you're done. It's the cheapest fix on this whole list, which is exactly why people skip it. Now let's talk about water. Number 10 is letting your cowl drains clog up. This is the one nobody warns you about, and it rots Wranglers from the floor up. Right below your windshield, in the panel called the cowl, there are little drains that carry rainwater away from your air vents. Leaves, pine needles, and trail dirt pack into those drains over time, and once they're blocked, the water has nowhere to go but down into your footwells, right under the carpet where you can't see it. At first, it's just a damp smell. Then it's mold growing under your seats, your carpet staying soaked for weeks, and the steel floor starting to rust from the top down. But the truly pricey part is what sits down there. Wranglers run electrical plugs and modules low in the cabin, and standing water creeps into them and rusts the metal pins. That becomes electrical gremlins, stuff turning on by itself, a no-start, weird faults no mechanic can trace, because the real cause is a clogged drain you've never looked at. Owners report this exact leak on the old TJ, the JK, and the new JL, so it's a well-known weak spot. The fix is free and takes 5 minutes. Pop the hood, find the cowl drains, and clear them out with a coat hanger and a flush of water every few months. Reseal the cowl if it's leaking, and keep your floor drain plugs in place. Ignore it, and water will kill your Jeep in the dumbest way possible. Speaking of expensive leaks, there's one hiding right under your intake. Number 9 is ignoring the oil cooler housing leak on the 3.6. If you've got the 3.6-liter Pentastar V6, which sits in nearly every Wrangler from 2012 on, you've got a part most owners never hear about until it lets them down. Down in the valley of the engine, tucked under the intake, sits the oil filter housing and oil cooler. On the JK generation especially, from about 2012 to 2017, that housing is made of plastic, and plastic plus constant heat equals cracks and dried out seals. When it lets go, it leaks oil and coolant down the back of the engine, and a lot of owners blame a rear main seal or a head gasket because that's exactly where it pools. Some people even crack the housing themselves by over-tightening the oil filter cap, when it only needs to be lightly snug, barely more than hand tight. The part itself is cheap, anywhere from $100 to $500. The labor is what stings, because the intake has to come off to reach it, so the installed bill usually lands between $1,000 and $1,400 at a shop. The smart play is to catch it early. At every oil change, grab a flashlight and look down into that valley for any wet, oily film. If it's leaking, replace it, and if you're spending the money anyway, swap the plastic part for an all-aluminum Dorman housing so you never deal with it again. The newer JL design is better, but it's still not bulletproof. And while we're under the hood, your lug nuts might be working themselves loose too. Before we get to the next mistake, if you want to keep your Wrangler running for hundreds of thousands of miles, check out my 500,000-mile Jeep blueprint. It's packed with the maintenance tips and owner habits that can save you thousands. The link is in the description below. Number 8 is never retorquing your lug nuts after a wheel change. This sounds way too small to matter until a wheel tries to leave your Jeep at 70 miles an hour. When you put on new wheels or rotate your tires, the wheel slowly pulls tight against the hub in the first few miles of driving. If those lug nuts were zipped on with an impact gun, the clamping force is uneven, and some of them lose their grip as everything settles. Loose lugs let the wheel wobble against the studs, and that wobble does two ugly things. It chews up your wheel studs and hub over time, and in the worst case, it walks the nuts right off until the wheel falls off. Going too far the other way is just as bad. Over-tightening with an impact gun stretches and snaps the studs and warps your brake rotors. So now you get a shake in the steering wheel every time you hit the brakes. The fix is about as free as it gets. Tighten your lug nuts to spec with a real torque wrench in a star pattern, not a circle. Then recheck them after about 50 to 100 miles of driving. Tire shops tell you to do that recheck for a reason, and almost nobody bothers. On a Wrangler with heavy aftermarket wheels and 35-inch tires, the stakes climb even higher, because there's more weight swinging on those studs. 5 minutes with a torque wrench saves you from a wheel bouncing down the highway. But some of the worst damage on this list comes from a sound you can actually hear. Number 7 is letting a cracked exhaust manifold tick away. There's a certain sound that haunts Wranglers, a light ticking that's loudest on a cold start and fades as the engine warms up. People talk themselves into thinking it's just normal engine noise, and they ignore it for years. That tick is usually a cracked exhaust manifold or a broken manifold stud, and which one you've got depends on your engine. The old 4-liter inline-6 in the TJ and the 3.8 V6 in the early JK both ran cast iron manifolds that crack from years of heating up and cooling down. The 3.6 is a little different because there it's the outer exhaust studs that like to snap off instead. Either way, you end up with an exhaust leak right at the engine, that ticking on a cold morning, and sometimes a check engine light pointing at the catalytic converter because the leak throws off your sensor readings. The reason this one's so nasty is that the longer you wait, the worse the repair gets. Those studs sit in a hot, rusty spot, and the longer they bake, the more likely they snap when someone tries to remove them, which turns a simple job into drilling and digging them out. A manifold replacement at a shop runs roughly $900 to $1,200, and the gaskets alone are around $400 to $600. Mopar even started using updated studs and a lower torque setting to stop them snapping. Fix the tick while it's still small. Now let's get into the mod that does more damage than almost any other. Number 6 is lifting your Jeep without fixing the angles. A lift kit is the first big mod nearly every Wrangler owner dreams about. It's also where a ton of them wreck their suspension without ever knowing it. When you lift a solid axle Jeep, you don't just raise it straight up. You change every angle underneath it. The axle slides off center, your caster drops, and the angles on your drive shaft and joints go out of whack. Slap on a cheap lift with no adjustable track bar and no adjustable control arms, and you've built a Jeep that wanders all over the highway and eats parts for breakfast. That off-center axle and bad caster are a direct recipe for death wobble, which we'll get to in a minute, and the bad angles grind through your U-joints and ball joints way ahead of schedule. You also get a buzzing vibration through the floor at speed, and that's your bad drive shaft angle talking. The Jeep can sit there looking gorgeous and be falling apart underneath. The fix is to lift it right the first time. Use an adjustable track bar to recenter the axle, adjustable control arms to set your caster back to about 4 to 6 degrees, and get a real alignment afterward. Buy quality parts instead of the cheapest kit on the shelf, because the cheap kit's parts are the first thing to fail. A done-right lift can last the life of the Jeep, while a lazy one is a slow-motion repair bill. But the next mistake came from the factory already broken, and there's a warranty most owners don't even know exists. Number 5 is ignoring the cylinder head tick on early 3.6 engines. If your Wrangler is a 2012 or 2013 model with the 3.6 V6, listen up, because this one left the factory broken and Jeep extended the warranty to cover it. The early Pentastar had a bad left cylinder head, the side with cylinders 2, 4, and 6. The exhaust valve seats in those heads would overheat and wear out, and the warning signs are a ticking noise first, then misfires. You'll usually throw a misfire code, something like a cylinder 2 misfire, and the engine starts running rough and losing power. And this is the part that saves you thousands. Chrysler put out an extended warranty, known inside the company as X56, that covers that left cylinder head for 10 years or 150,000 miles. Most owners have no idea it exists, so they pay out of pocket or get told it's just a normal noise. The catch is that the coverage depends on your exact build date and your VIN, so plenty of 2013 owners still get turned away at the counter, even with the same engine. If you're not covered, this is a brutal bill. A full left cylinder head job, with the head, cams, lifters, and rockers, runs over $3,000, climbing close to $4,000. Chrysler claimed only about 0.5% of these engines were affected, but if yours is one of them, that number means nothing. The second you hear that tick and see a misfire, get your VIN checked against the X56 program before you spend a dime. Number 4 is running part-time 4WD on dry pavement. This is the mistake that makes longtime Jeep guys cringe because it's so easy to do and so bad for the drivetrain. Your Wrangler most likely has a part-time 4-wheel drive system, the classic command track or rock track setup. When you shift into 4 high or 4 low, that transfer case locks your front and rear drive shafts together so they're forced to spin at the same speed. On dirt, sand, or snow, that's perfect because the loose ground lets the tires slip and cancel out the difference. But on dry, grippy pavement, especially in a turn, the front and rear wheels need to roll at different speeds, and the locked driveline has no way to let them. So the stress builds up with nowhere to go. Jeep even has a name for it, crow hop, where the Jeep shudders and the tires scuff because the driveline is fighting itself. Keep doing it, and you overheat and damage your transfer case, your front axle, and your U-joints. People do this all the time by forgetting to shift back to 2 high after a snowy morning, then running errands on clear roads all day in 4-wheel drive. The rule is simple. Dry, grippy pavement means 2 high, every single time. Only lock into 4-wheel drive when the ground under you is loose or slick enough to let the tires slip. It costs nothing to do right. The next one costs nothing either, and it can save your axles from drowning. Number 3 is fording water without extending your breathers. Every Wrangler has little tubes called breathers on its axles, its transfer case, and its transmission, and they let those sealed parts vent air pressure as they heat up and cool down. The problem shows up the second you drive into water. A hot axle that suddenly hits cold water shrinks fast, and that creates a vacuum inside the housing. That vacuum sucks water in, either through the breather tube or past the axle seals, which were built to keep oil in, not to keep water out. Once water gets into your gear oil, it turns into a milky brown sludge that mechanics actually call a milkshake, and that nasty oil chews up your bearings and gears from the inside. Jeep rates the newer JL to ford water only up to 30 inches, and only at about 5 miles an hour, so people who blast through deeper crossings or splash the same creek over and over are rolling the dice every time. The fix is almost embarrassingly cheap. A breather extension kit is usually under $50, and it just runs those vent tubes up high into the engine bay where water can't reach them. Put that on before you go play in the water. And after any deep crossing, pull a little fluid from your diffs and check it. If it's milky, change it right away before it grinds your axle into metal shavings. Skip the breathers, and one fun afternoon can cost you a whole differential. But the most famous Wrangler problem of all is next. Number 2 is chasing death wobble with just a new steering damper. If you own a Wrangler, you've heard the term death wobble, and it's every bit as scary as it sounds. You hit a bump or a seam in the road around 45 or 50 miles an hour, and suddenly your whole steering wheel and front end start shaking so hard you'd swear the Jeep is about to fall apart. People panic and do the one thing that almost never works. They throw a new steering damper at it. A steering damper is basically a shock absorber for your steering, and a fresh one only hides the shake for a while. Death wobble isn't one broken part, it's a pile of loose, worn slop in your steering and suspension, all feeding on itself. The number one cause is a worn track bar or a loose track bar bolt, then worn tie rod ends, ball joints, and wheel bearings, often started by a bad tire balance or low caster. Even Jeep knew it was a problem. On the JL, the company replaced the steering dampers on around 192,000 2018 and 2019 Wranglers under a special repair program. The government safety investigators opened a case covering roughly 270,000 Jeeps that ran all the way until 2023. But notice they just swapped the damper, the same Band-Aid. The real fix is to hunt down the slop. Tighten the track bar bolts to spec, replace the worn track bar, tie rod ends, and ball joints in pairs, and get your tires balanced on a good machine. A proper steering overhaul runs $2,000 to $3,500, but it actually ends the wobble. The damper alone just delays the day it comes back. And finally, the number one mistake on this list can burn your Jeep to the ground. Number 1 is ignoring a recall or warning on a 4xe or diesel Wrangler. The most expensive mistake a Wrangler owner can make right now is treating a recall like junk mail, and it's hitting two engines especially hard. Start with the 4xe, the plug-in hybrid Wrangler. In 2025, Jeep put out a huge safety recall covering more than 320,000 4xe vehicles, because a flaw in the battery cells can make them catch fire, sometimes while parked or charging. And the wild part? This is already the third recall for the same fire problem, and Jeep has counted 19 battery fires, 9 of them in Jeeps that were supposedly fixed once already. So the advice to owners is blunt. Park it outside and away from your house and other buildings, and do not charge it until the repair is done. People who shrug that off are parking a possible fire in their garage every single night. Then there's the EcoDiesel, the 3-liter turbo diesel. On the Grand Cherokee version of that same diesel, Jeep recalled over 34,000 vehicles because a cracked EGR cooler could let coolant catch fire inside the intake. So if you've got the diesel Wrangler and you see coolant disappearing with no puddle on the ground, white steam from the exhaust, or a sweet smell, take that seriously, fast. And one more trap on the turbo engines is oil dilution, where fuel sneaks into your oil on short, cold trips, especially on a 4xe driven mostly on battery. Never reset your oil life light without an actual oil change, and make sure your shop uses the right 5W30 oil, because the wrong stuff slowly speeds up the wear. A recall notice is the one warning light that shows up in your mailbox, so don't ever throw it away. So there you go, 12 quiet habits that send good Wranglers to an early grave, and most of them don't cost a thing to avoid, because the pattern behind every single one is the same. Your Jeep almost never screams before it breaks. It whispers, with a tick, a leak, a damp carpet, or a letter in the mail. And the owners who listen save thousands while everyone else pays for it later. So there you go, 12 things Wrangler owners do that quietly destroy their Jeeps. Which one surprises you the most? Or which one have you actually seen happen? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this helpful, give the video a like and subscribe. And if you want to keep your Jeep running for hundreds of thousands of miles, click the video on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.